Righto, the James Hird saga continues. Well, the Essendon saga continues. Doc Larkins is this radio station's sports medico. Good morning to you, Doc.
Morning, Ross.
James Hird now says yes. Well, he never denied having been jabbed, ever. He now confirms, I guess, to the Herald Sun this morning that he was injected. He was injected twice, he said, because he was feeling sick and he thought it was amino acids. He is not subject to the WADA code. He is subject to the AFL code. Has he got a problem?
He has, in the sense, well, look, if he shows it was therapeutic, I don't understand why he didn't go to his doctor of 25 years if he was feeling sick, Ross, because that's what I'd tell you to do. But putting that aside, amino acids on their own are not against the WADA code, but injections may go against AFL code.
Oh, let me clarify this. If he says, I thought they were amino acids, but they actually turn out to be human growth hormone, what is his status?
If they turn out to be human growth hormone, his status would be that the AFL would look very seriously at why he would be taking a drug that is not allowed in sport in a non-sporting context.
But he says, I thought it was amino acids. Is that a defence?
Well, it's not a defence for any athlete in the past 2 decades who have inadvertently tested positive in the sport codes of other sports, Ross.
And we know that the reason for that is that if that was a defence, every single athlete who tested positive would say, I thought it was amino acids.
Well, that's exactly what you would say, of course. But I don't think he'll test positive, because if it was, as you alluded to, a growth hormone or growth hormone precursor, the technology isn't sufficiently good enough for James Hird to have a positive test. So it will purely be a charge of using an irregular product, but not a positive test. The
story for me that's bubbling under is not James Hird, though that is serious enough. It's the question of the Essendon players. What is the status of anti-obesity drug 9604?
Well, it's in its last legs of trials at Monash University for treatment of a thing called metabolic syndrome, which is a combination of obesity and diabetes and high blood pressure, Ross. So by very definition, it's a clinical research drug, which is very, very specifically mentioned in the WADA code as not being allowed to be taken.
So you say that if Dank says I injected James Hird, that turns out to be true. Dank said I injected the players with AOD 9604.
Yep.
Then isn't that emerging as possibly the real story, that you have Essendon players who have been injected with a non-WADA drug?
It's always been the real story behind the scenes, Ross, with all the accusations. It's clearly, we've all been saying we have to know what product was used before we execute anybody. Okay. And whether it was vitamin B, as Mark McVeigh said on radio, or whether it was AOD 9064 or a growth hormone precursor, they're totally different results for the player in terms of consequences, Ross.
How do they prove that it was AOD 9604 if the only evidence of that is that Dank says that's what he injected them with?
That's the very, very hard part. I mean, if there won't be a positive test in a player, right? So that's not going to be the case. It's going to be paper trail, it's going to be evidence, it's going to be testimony. The players are in a very difficult position because I believe they have been guinea pigs and vulnerable, whatever the product is. So it's really going to be a very significant test case for any jury in relation to sport jury here, Ross.
Why would James not go to Doc Reid if he's feeling crook? Why would he allow a non-doctor to inject him with anything?
I would like to ask James Hird that question because, as I rightly said before, it surprises me. Given the long-term relationship that Dr Bruce Reid has had with James Hird since he was 16 or 17 years of age, I believe, Ross, and he is his family doctor, looks after his wife and children, it seemed to me a very strange change of behaviour by James Hird.
Doc, we thank you very much for your time as always.
There'll be more layers to this, Ross. Keep in tune.
Okay, all right. Someone just keep Doc on the line and ask him what that cryptic comment meant. If he could give us any sort of, because he will know of what he speaks. Talking